All right, so we just talked about still wine, and we just talked about sparkling wine. Let's talk about three other kinds: aromatized wines, distilled wines, and fortified wines. And don't get distilled mixed up with still. Okay, different kind of thing. All right, so aromatized wines. Aromatized wines, these are wines that have some sort of flavor. They're still wines that have some sort of flavoring added to them. A perfect example of that is called vermouth. Vermouth, V-E-R-M-O-U-T-H. Vermouth is used to make Manhattans. It's used to make, well, I think it's in Manhattans, but it's definitely in martinis. Definitely martinis. I don't know what else it is. It might be in old fashions. No, old fashions is muddled fruit. Manhattan martinis. So what it is, it's a wine that has different things added to it. Now, we use wormwood to flavor vermouth. Two other kinds of aromatized wines that come to mind is Lillet, L-I-L-L-E-T, and Dubonnet, D-U-B-O-N-E-T. And Lillet and Dubonnet are two other kinds of aromatized wines. Lillet and Dubonnet are actually nice wines to have as an aperitif, before dinner drink. We're not going to spend a lot of time with these, but I think I told you the other day that the way that aromatized wines first got started was when the Roman legions were traveling around. They were carrying their wine with them from Italy, from Rome, in animal hide skin bags on their backs and stuff, in wagons. And after a couple of months, it tasted pretty bad. Actually, it probably tasted pretty bad the minute they put it into those animal skin flasks. And so they would add things like tar, pitch, seawater, seaweed, ashes from the campfire, and they finally came across something good to put in there, which was wormwood, and started making vermouth type thing, just to make this wine palatable. That's how it came about. But it's actually not a bad thing, but they're really not very popular anymore. Very few people drink them, other than as a mixer, the vermouth. But I like a Lillet or Dubonnet. All right, then we have distilled wines, and these are your brandies. There is a cognac. Where are cognacs made?
Cognac.
In Cognac. Okay? So cognac is a type of distilled wine that it's made in Cognac, France. And it's a kind of brandy. You can say this: all cognacs are brandies, but not all brandies are cognacs. Because just like all champagnes are sparkling wines, not all sparkling wines are champagnes. Okay, they have to come. A cognac has to come from Cognac, France. Now, just talk a little about this. The way that we got brandies and distilled wines, basically, was wines were made in France, basically. They're at least on the European continent. The British liked wine, and the Dutch would buy wine and ship it to England. But that was expensive. You had to put these wines in these big casks and ship it over there. So the Dutch thought, well, what if we heat this wine up and capture the spirit of the wine, which is where the word spirits comes from. We capture the word, so we're going to add heat, and I'm going to do another lecturette here on how to distill everything, not just wines. But so we have the spirit of the wine, and so basically what they were doing is they were concentrating the wine because they were getting rid of a lot of the water. Their thought was, we'll ship it over to England and we'll add water back to it to turn it back into wine. But what happened was they got it over there, and the British liked the taste of brandy. The Dutch call it brandy because brandy vine means burnt wine. They added heat to it. Now you've probably heard of brandy wine, Pennsylvania, and so that's where this distilled spirit of wines comes from. it's called brandy, and if it's made in cognac. There's also a place, if you want to impress people, there's a place just south of Cognac called Armagnac. Armagnac. A-R-M-A-N-G-N-A-C, I think it's spelled. I think that's how it's spelled. But Armagnac is a brandy producing area south of, I'm pretty sure it's south of Cognac, which makes a little bit, their brandy is a little bit more earthy tasting than the cognac. I liked it. Back when I used to drink, I only drink beer and wine. I don't drink any distilled spirits for my health. But actually it is for my health. But so I don't drink brandies and cognacs anymore. I used to really like them. So that is an example of a distilled wine. Now the last category of wine we have here is called a fortified wine. And a fortified wine is a table wine, a still wine that has brandy added to it. Okay, the two examples of that come to mind are port and sherry. And port comes from a place in Spain. Well, it used to be, it's shipped from a place in Spain called Oporto, which means the port. So, you know, all these wines were coming to England that said, you know, Porto on them. So the British call it port. Sherries come from an area called Jerez. Depends if you're Castilian or not. If you're Castilian, it's Jerez. Okay? Regular Spanish, Jerez. And the British pronounced it Jarez, Jaries, and finally became sherries. And that's where the word sherry came from. Well, the reason that they do this with the ports, you see, all ports are after dinner drinks. They're high in alcohol. You can't get that high in alcohol with regular fermentation. With regular fermentation, you can get to about 17% alcohol. And then the yeast die. So with ports, they wanted them to be stronger, number one, and number two, they wanted them to be sweeter. But you don't want to add just sugar in to make it taste sweeter. So what you have to do is you have to stop the fermentation before the yeast eat all the sugar. Because these port grapes are very sweet. The grapes used to make port, and I forget exactly the names of them, but they're very sweet grapes. So if you just let the yeast eat all the sugar they wanted, they would be dry wines, dry being the opposite of sweet. So they add brandy to them, both to increase the alcohol, but also to stop their fermentation process while the wine is still sweet. All ports are sweet. Sherries, on the other hand, come in a variety of dry to sweet. There is very dry sherries. And I'm not going to go into all the Olorosos and all the different, kinds of sherries. They go from dry sherries to very sweet sherries, sometimes called a cream sherry on the other end. And there's a whole lot to sherries that I'm not going to get into now, but you need to know. But that's the rest of your 5 styles of winemaking. So we have the still, the sparkling, the aromatized, the distilled, and the fortified wines. I didn't know you wanted to get a picture.